Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right on KPFT. Before I get started, folks, we're going to have a great show tonight, but please do remember that this is a call-in show, 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-KPFT, and Roxy loves to say it this way.
713-JAM KPFT.
Excellent. But before I get started, Roxy, thank you very much for being here. And Roxy, thank you for being there, for just getting those right questions and all those things going. And also, do remember to tell your parents, hey, mommy, hey, daddy, you were right.
You are so welcome, Egberto. Yes, and I feel like like I said to you earlier before the show started, I feel like I've come to an age where I am like, I hate you parents because you're right. I've learned everything you try to instill for me for the past 24 years. You're right. And it's so annoying, and my mom knows it, but yes.
Well, don't worry. I think my daughter also realizes that. Right, daughter? Anyhow. Anyhow, folks, remember again, this is a call-in program, 713-526-5738. We're going to have a great show today. This is KPFT, Houston 90.1, Galveston 89.5, Huntsville 89.7, Goodrich, Livingston 90.3. Please remember to go to my website. The website is egbertowillies.com, EGBERTOWILLIES.com. We're going to have a great show today. You know, I actually attended the Texas Democratic Convention this weekend. And, you know, the entire convention was inspiring and filled with energy. I mean, there was a ton of energy out there, folks. I spoke to a woman, an ordained minister who placed religion, politics, policy, and compassion for fellow human beings into the right context. But maybe the Supreme Court should have listened to her after what they did today. Maybe they need to realize that religion has no place in business. Today is a day that will live in infamy. Everyone knows that the Supreme Court over the years have given corporations progressively more and more, what kind of rights? Human rights to corporations, folks. The Supreme Court ruling today on the side of Hobby Lobby has done two things. It has declared war on women's rights from the highest court of the land. It has also codified into the interpretation of the law that companies like people can go to church. Maybe they will find some way to lock corporations up, throw them in jail cells when they misbehave. But you know what? Of more concern is that the Supreme Court has made corporations people with a license to discriminate. They are people with the right to control women. They have authorized war on women, folks. So let's get busy. Let's get busy.
It's time for the weekly blog post.
While at the Democratic Convention, I met a woman it was an ordained minister. And she put quite a bit into perspective. So I decided to make her sort of the centerpiece of my Daily Coast front page blog on Sunday. She got into a little teasy then because of talking to what was the press, but all turned out fine. The title of it was, or is, Charlotte Coyle is a bridge to the quasi-mythical Texas Valley voter, ordained minister. It is that season here in Texas. Texas is gearing up for the midterm elections. Thousands of delegates, friends, and politicians from all over Texas have descended on Dallas for the Texas Democratic Convention. There is an excitement in the air that has been missing from Texas Democratic politics for some time. It is more than just that Senator Wendy Davis filibuster in the summer of 2013 that brought one of the largest rallies and one of the largest protest marches to the Capitol in Austin, Texas. It is more than the fact that Texas has a strong slate of state candidates ready to serve. It is more than the Democratic Party of this southern state running a very diverse slate of candidates, including a woman, a Latina, and many other diverse candidates at the top of the ticket and throughout the slates. It is that Texans are starting to wake up from their nightmare. It is that Texans are starting to believe that their votes matter. It is that Texans are starting to revisit their real values and not those imposed on them by what I term the new Pharisees. And folks, go to my website at egbertowillies.com and read up about the new Pharisees. And for those who are Christians, know the stories of the Pharisees in the Bible, let's talk about who are the new Pharisees. But anyway, many voting Texans are very attached to their religion. Religion has been used as a ball and chain around many Texans for decades. In fact, many men and women leaders of the cloth have been complicit in enabling Texans to vote against their own interests. Many have done so as they have put perceived value judgments over their own economic and health interests. They did not realize that these interests were never really in conflict. Charlotte Coyle, an ordained minister and local pastor, puts this all into perspective. Charlotte Coyle is attending the Texas Democratic Convention. As she sat down in the Omni Hotel waiting for her husband, she had a little chat with a few Democratic activists and politicians. She was not shy about talking about her views and her values. Make no mistake, Charlotte Coyle is a devout Christian. She makes no apologies for her faith. She wears it on her being without any signs of overbearing. In other words, she is no Pharisee, new or old. Charlotte Coyle believes that it is her duty going forward to promote the values she believes in, values that promote middle-class centric policies through the political process. Charlotte Coyle began registering voters in her county in Texas, a county that, while very Republican, is ready for substantive Democratic activation. She believes that the Democratic Party best represents the Christian values she lives by. It is in that vein that she has been working for the Democratic Party to effect the change necessary in her county, the changes that she believes needed in her view. Charlotte Coyle does not run away from the difficult issues. She knows her faith addresses them. On homosexuality, she reminds everyone that Jesus did not parameterize acceptance. When Jesus said, and this is her, when Jesus said, you are to welcome one another and to accept one another and to include one another, Charlotte Coyle said he never talked about gender issues or sexual orientation. Charlotte reminds everyone that the vast majority of women do not choose abortion lightly. I don't know anyone who really likes abortion, Charlotte Coyle said. It is a struggle for a woman to have to make that decision. The Christian value would support her in her struggle to make a decision that is best for her and for her family. One of the most prescient statements made by Charlotte Coyle should be heeded by every man and woman of the cloth. Pulling a few verses from the Old Testament or a few verses from the Apostle Paul and creating an entire theological position on that damages the work of Jesus Christ, Charlotte Coyle said. I feel very passionate about that, and I want to be a Christian who is not like those other Christians. So says Pastor Coyle. Charlotte Coyle and those that share her honest values, a religion and true concern for humanity and middle-class America is that bridge many in the Democratic Party must use to reach the quasi-mythical value voter. She is one of the missing links that must be inserted into that chainsaw to rip the ball and chains from many Americans. That woman's, I have her video, the interview that I did with her on my website, egbertowillies.com. Check it out. I would love for whatever type of Christian that you are to check it out, because she gives the definition of what those that purport to be Christians should be all about. I have another blog, but I'm not ready for that yet. Let's go ahead and talk to Terry. Terry, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great. How you doing, my friend?
Talk to me. The subject today is actually about the Supreme Court, religion, and its interaction between what's going on today. And folks, do remember the telephone number is 713-526-5738, 713-526-KPFT, and this is KPFT, Houston 90.1, Galveston 89.5, Huntsville 89.7, Goodrich, Livingston 90.3. Haven't heard from you in a while, Terry. Talk to me.
A few things. Number one, let's remember that religion has, throughout time, been the cause of some of the greatest problems in human history.
Absolutely.
In the confines of this country, let's remember that the term in the Pledge of Allegiance, under God, didn't get added until the 50s. It was in the direct result of the quote-unquote red menace of the quote-unquote godless Russian state. Number three, in the 60s, that well-known Republican sage, Barry Goldwater, made a claim about religion and politics, and it went something, and I'm going to paraphrase loosely, that he had been fighting against the religious nut jobs for all of his political career because he feared that those people would get control of the Republican Party, and that they had been trying to get control of the Republican Party, and that he predicted that if they ever did, the country would be in a hell of a shape. I think Barry Goldwater's claims have come to fruition.
Absolutely.
This ruling today, in my opinion, you see we are on the cusp of the rise of the movie Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Well, this ruling, in my opinion, is the rise of the American Taliban.
Terry, let me stop you right there, because that is the perfect analogy. Very few people are ready to make that analogy. But if you take a look at the path that these people are taking, it is no different. It is absolutely no different than the Talibanization of the American system.
Well, let's look at a couple of examples of where they have mirrored Taliban behavior exactly. As you know, the Taliban, if you don't convert, they kill you, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so how many abortion doctors have been murdered in this country? Because they...
Several.
Exactly. So, again, a direct parallel to behavior manifest by the Taliban. The Taliban wants a strict religious interpretation and a strict religious comparison of all of its laws, and they want religious codification of all their laws. How does that differ from today's decision, where an executive or a company or an ownership of a company based on their personal religious values can co-opt federal law? Now, let's think about that for a second. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. But here's the thing. What about if this gets expanded, which we know it will? What about those members of, and I don't remember the particular grouping, but I think they are Middle Eastern, maybe Pakistani or Arab or something, who believe that if a woman dishonors her family, she can and should be killed. I believe the phenomenon is called mercy killing,
Right.
or honor killing.
Yes.
Honor
yes.
killing.
Yes.
That is codified in their religion.
Right.
Now, after today's decision, who's to stop them?
Well, the reality, Terry, is it's also codified. If for those who are scholars of the Bible or claim to be, if they actually took the Bible literally, the same, believe it or not, the same applies in some books in the Old Testament for what should the outcome of said woman be in that religion as well. So I mean, it's not like it's not there.
Yeah, and let's don't even get into the discussion or the debate about the books of the Bible that are conveniently ignored. Just the books that are published has enough violence and hatred against women that if the crucible is going to be that we cannot offend someone's religious beliefs, then we are on our way not down a slippery slope, but we're going to take a roller coaster ride down the slippery slope, and it's not going to be pretty. Because there are enough religions in this country, and religion is such a broad topic that, there are religions that codify bigotry. There are religions that codify murder. There are religions that codify, believe it or not, pedophilia. The guy who is the most infamous example of that is, I believe, Warren Jeffs.
Right, exactly.
Of the FLDS church.
Exactly, yes.
Those people believe that it's okay to marry off 12-year-old women to 40-year-old men. So now, should Warren Jeff be released from prison because his religious beliefs allow him to basically practice pedophilia as we define it in this country? These are the issues that this short-sighted court didn't think about when they made this ruling.
What is interesting is, we're looking at it from the religious aspect right now. Specifically, how far can they go? What are the things within the Bible if they decide? It was interesting because I wrote another blog this morning, and I actually got some video from MSNBC, one of the analysts talking about the issue, and one of them stating that, well, it was a very narrow decision. But the reality is that the decision, as narrow as it is, opens Pandora's box, because it may be narrow today in its implementation, but what do you think comes tomorrow? There are 40 more cases that are going to test that law. And each time those 40 cases come through, it has to be an expansion. I want to break off topic for a while. And the reason why I just want to show how the Supreme Court works. And when we had the Citizens United case, where the codification of money is speech, corporate, and before that, corporate personhood, it was kind of interesting because people sort of said, oh, well, we'll probably stop there. Then the McCutcheon case came, and it was no longer only about corporations, but about the individual who could give unlimited monies to the people. Back in several of the other organizations that I was talking about, none of them had a thought that the Supreme Court could ever rule in favor of McCutcheon. And to which I said, I don't see how they cannot rule in favor of McCutcheon given their previous decision. Now, let's extrapolate that into this decision today. Today, what they've said is this for-profit corporation can somehow discriminate against women, can somehow tell women, if you're working for us, and it is a policy in the United States that employers provide health insurance to you. It is a policy of this country now that we will decide what type of contraception that you will have. I have another blog post where I kind of illustrate some of these issues, because people don't quite understand how deep this is. This has not only a social effect on women, it also has an economic effect on women that very few understand. Let me go to Roxy, because Roxy is a young lady. Roxy, did you hear about that decision today at all?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. What were your initial thoughts?
Now, it's the ruling that private. Let me make sure I have it right first.
Yes.
That it's a Supreme Court ruling that private religious organizations such as Hobby Lobby can decide whether they want to pay for women's contraceptive.
Right, exactly.
Okay, in retaliation, I personally I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about it because I've never been in a position financially where I had a company or an organization make that ruling for me.
Right.
However, I'm getting to that age and that stage in my life where that needs to be a priority. So, I mean, I personally think it's unfair, but I just don't understand why it's women. Because what about things like Viagra? Like, why is Viagra something acceptable to versus something like birth control, which is unacceptable? Because sometimes birth control 9 times out of 10 is not
for
used,
birth control.
It's not for birth control.
Right.
Like, it's for other things that women
Exactly.
have issues with, and that's a lot of reasons why the reason I started taking birth control so young was because of other reasons, not
Exactly.
for contraception.
Right.
And I think it's kind of I know it's unfair. It is very unfair. However, I don't see maybe this is just me, but I don't see Viagra I see Viagra kind of under the same
I want to
birth control.
listen to this part. I'm not going to read the whole blog, but this is what I wrote. I'm glad you brought up Viagra because this is what I wrote this morning. It was right after the ruling, and it said as follows: conservative dogma is completely against government encroachment on the lives of the individual. It is fascinating how the pole is moved based on arbitrary parameters. Government encroachment on women's rights is acceptable to control her reproduction and reproductive rights. Corporate encroachment of women's rights is acceptable in order to control a woman's reproductive health. Maybe Viagra should be made illegal, since it may be God's will that after a certain age men should cease from having sex. The point is that in this male-dominated society, males continue to make laws both within government and within the church that affect women. Kate Kelly's story about her rights within the Mormon church is probative. This Supreme Court decision in the Hobby Lobby case is not a trivial matter. A woman's lack of control of her reproductive rights is more than a religious or social issue. It is an economic issue. The inability to effectively plan her own pregnancy has repercussions that do not affect men. Men cannot get pregnant. Is there any doubt why every female Supreme Court justice voted against Hobby Lobby? Anyone doubting that there is a war on women has a limited scope of thought when the issue is examined in its totality.
Exactly. If you're going to approve Viagra, why can't you approve something for a women's choice to take to prevent birth?
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying I'm not trying to speak for women's rights. I'm not trying to be totally equal, but it's just kind of like the circle of it all, just kind of like
it's always unequal for women. But I tell you something, Roxy. I want to know when, and women don't take it hard on me, women, but I want to know when women are going to stand up to these guys, to these chauvinists, and say enough is enough. Terry, I'm going to come back to you, but I want to go to John. John, come on in from San Antonio. Well, I think as soon as Roxy get the other line, you're on, John. Talk to me.
Good evening, Roberta. How you feeling?
How you doing, my friend?
Good. I just want to address Roxy's point for a second. The reason that Hobby Lobby sued is the company. This is taken from an article on Mother Jones by Stephanie Minsemer. And here's part of it. It says the company argues that emergency contraception pills such as Ella and Plan B destroy fertilized eggs by interfering with implantation in the uterus. Hobby Lobby's owners consider this abortion, but the pills don't work that way. There's been a lot of research on how these pills work, and the findings are definite. They prevent pregnancy by blocking ovulation. In fact, they don't work once ovulation has occurred. As Corbin recently wrote in a recent law article, every reputable scientist study to examine Plan B's mechanism has concluded that these pills prevent fertilization from occurring in the first place. In short, Plan B is contraception. Labels on these products have been updated in Europe to reflect the science, and the Catholic Church in Germany dropped its opposition to local Catholic hospitals providing emergency contraception to rape victims after reviewing the evidence. The science is so clear, in fact, that even Dennis Miller, an abortion foe and director of the Bioethics Center at the Christian Cedarville University, concluded that emergency contraception drugs don't cause abortions.
That is so true. You know, I read that actually I didn't read that particular article, but just before I came into the studio, I read an article in the New York Times. And the New York Times actually mentioned that doesn't occur. But I tell you what, women's and folks, I just studied this. I'm not a woman, but I just studied this. Go ahead. Roxy, you're itching to say something.
Well, I mean, I don't even okay, yes, I believe that Plan B is a contraceptive. However, I don't feel like you can buy that over the counter. Like that, you can just go walk into any of your CVS. You don't need a prescription for that. So I don't even know why it matters to Hobby Lobby.
Exactly.
If I take, if I'm working there and I as the commercials say, when your birth control fails, when you're not 100%, and you go out one night and you come back with a strange human and you do, you're not 100% sure on what happened, and I should be, have the free will to go to CVS and, get the Plan B pill.
You remember when Terry was talking about the Talibanization of our country?
Yeah.
But, stay with me, John. Stay with me, Terry. Let's go to Mike. Okay, Mike.
How you doing, Umberto?
I am doing great. Make your point, my dear friend.
All right, Roxy made a great point. And the point being that prescription oral contraceptions have other uses than preventing pregnancies. And, I could go down the list, irregularities connected to the menstrual cycle, be they painful or irregular, menses, absent, amenorrheic, or heavy menses, and, often really serious problems with, like, syndromes called polycystic ovary disease, which is pretty serious stuff. And, this is valid medical treatment. And, sometimes they can even use this to treat acne, believe it or not.
Right.
And so these are really potentially important medical conditions. And I'm not exactly sure how Hobby Lobby, I guess, through their insurance plan, they can deny it. Maybe you can explain that for me.
Well, what is interesting, what happens is that their plan won't. When the Affordable Care Act was written, there's a baseline that all insurance policies must carry. They must carry preventive care. They must carry contraception for women, and not only that, but women had to get the same rates that men get. Let me tell you, Mike, women in this country, and and all us macho men, as we grow up and decide that we're no longer going to be the way we were, we realize that in a lot of ways, a lot of laws that were passed were male-centric laws. And if you look at what the Supreme Court did today, it was very male-centric. They didn't think that there's a large percentage of women that contraception is really not just contraception, but medicine for other reasons. But even if that were the only case, Mike, even if it were only for contraception, whatever happened to the tenet of conservatives that we stay out of the lives of people?
Good point. And that's a good point for you. If I can ask you to explain, and I'm sure it's going to be fairly mundane, explain how religion weaves itself into it. And I suppose the CEO Hobby Lobby is a Bible thumper.
Well, yes. Actually, it turns out that the company claims that the owners claim to be, very religious Christians. I mean, there are a lot of Christians that don't agree with them, but these particular Christians believe that as the owners of this corporation, that they can actually decide that what their employees will receive as far as contraception or not. But I tell you, Mike, there's a bigger fundamental question here, and I alluded to that in the piece that I wrote. And the biggest fundamental question is corporate personhood. Remember, in this country, we have decided to create an artificial entity called a corporation. A corporation is a living being as treated by the law that has certain rights like human beings.
You're alluding to Citizens United.
This is actually deeper than Citizens United. It goes back to the Supreme Court decision, Pacific Railroad versus something. They don't quote me on the something else because I can't remember the particular Supreme Court law. But what it did is it in effect it said corporations are people. They have legal rights, which means to some extent the Bill of Rights actually applies to them. So they have free speech. And then with Citizens United and others, Bucky Vallejo, we actually said money is speech. I mean, there are a whole lot of areas here where we're fundamentally given the rights of human beings to corporations. So while this may look like a major religious thing, where religion has encroached into the ethos, religion has encroached into into a woman's sphere with her corporate with the company, it's deeper. What it's actually saying is that the owners of Hobby Lobby can have a religion, and by inference, that corporation as an individual can have a religion as well.
Well, you weave it, you bring up, there's some interesting topics that weave themselves into this, and alluding to an old friend of mine from way back long ago named Billy. And he said, what a tangled web we weave, or something like that. And I'm going to rehash one of his comments, and it sounds like this is to make babies or to not make babies. And where you come here in this free speech argument is, well, you got two folks butting heads. You got, Samantha Schmo, so to speak, the individual, butting heads with the corporations, and you have two people free speeching at each other. And so it sounds like in this particular case, corporate sugar daddy wins.
Well, as it turns out, for in the
campaign finance,
right, corporate sugar daddy has been winning for a long time. That's why a lot of us activists out here are trying to mitigate that. And how do we mitigate that? By doing what we're doing, communicating with people. But I want to bring some more folks into. Roxy just had to go take another line. So before I get to the other person, let me just say this: corporations have been winning. And by the way, for all those that are listening out there, please do not dare think that I simply think corporations are bad. Corporations are not bad. I can name you a dozen great corporations right now, a dozen folk that do good by their people, do good by their employees.
Exxon, General Motors, and the nuclear power plant industry.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being sarcastic. My brain's kind of short.
Hey, Mike,
and,
don't worry about
Daddy's got to go nap.
Well, you take your daddy nap. I got to go to another call. Thank you very much for calling me, Mike. You're a good man. Let me take line 4 for Leroy. Leroy, come on in.
Good evening.
Good evening, Leroy.
Yeah, I just caught a little bit of this. I jumped in the car to go do an errand, and it's so compelling. What I wanted to follow up on was the comment about corporate personhood.
Yes, sir.
And, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. But I also think if the courts are going to take this notion of corporate personhood to the limit, then corporations are culpable for violent crimes.
Absolutely.
Corporations should be punished.
Listen,
corporations should go to jail when they break the law instead of cutting deals. If you're going to be a person, then you go all the way.
My friend, that is utter genius. And the reason why it's that, and I put, that was interesting enough, I think that was in the middle of the stuff that I just read, where I said, I want to see when we're going to actually take corporations to jail. Exactly that. Take them to jail because, the BP oil spill, let's find a way to lock that corporation up in jail. Think about all these things. Now, when it comes to personhood, though, that is a very, very, very serious issue, and I want to make a plug for Move to Amend. Folks, I'd like you to go to a website. It's called movetoamend.org. And go ahead and sign that petition, because that is a group that's working towards removing personhood from corporations and also removing free speech from making sure that money is not speech. We don't define money as speech. So I'm glad you see that. But continue, my friend.
I think I'm more inclined to go that way for the simple fact that corporations, in my opinion, were really basically raised as a way of diffusing risk, allowing people to collectively pull together, and that's cool. That's a noble goal for creating commerce and enterprise, and to have a certain limit of liability. Well, okay, I can go along with that. But the game has become so rigged. On the one hand, you want corporate personhood, but on the other hand, you want all of these benefits that are given to this entity, which has limited risk and liability. As a person, I don't have limited risk.
Sir, you are absolutely.
So I say fine. You stop it right there. You say fine. It's a tool for accumulating capital and spreading risk, and that's as far as it goes. Anything else accrues to the individual. So if I'm on a board of a corporation, I may be limited, have limited financial risk, but I have complete criminal risk.
Right. Listen,
I can't hide.
There was a time that corporations had a limited lifespan. In other words, a corporation would be formed. What government didn't do, a corporation would be formed to do. Maybe build a bridge. A corporation is put together, they build a bridge, and after that, after their charter is over, they're no longer in existence. Well, as time went on, this all changed, and I'm not the expert in this. There's the guy who is the chief spokesman for MoveToAmend.org. He has that speech down perfectly, where he can show you or talk to you about the growth of a corporation, how we went from not having corporations to having corporations with a limited lifespan, to following that having corporations that never die. Corporations that never die. So it's a good thing. There's another thing that I'd like to tell you. There's a documentary made called Legalized Democracy. Legalized Democracy, you can actually find it at moveon.org as well. It's an interesting documentary that shows you exactly how we went from the populace making America a more democratic country to the Supreme Court removing democracy one step at a time. Think about what the Supreme Court did today. And I'm coming to Terry next. Think about what has happened now. We have the Supreme Court that is slowly eating away at the individual's democracy, at the same time that it is given that much more power to the corporation. And the question is, how much longer can that last? Leroy, you have anything else you want to tell me, my friend?
That's fine. Thank you so much. Keep it up.
You have a wonderful day, sir. Terry.
Yes, still here.
Come on in, my friend. Anything to add?
Yeah, I can give you I don't remember the exact date, but I can give you the event that chronicled the divergence of corporatism versus what we have now. And that was the day after the federal government broke up the Bell Corporation.
Okay.
I don't know how old Roxy is. She probably wasn't alive when that happened.
No.
Did you say the Bell Corporation?
Yeah, that was before your time.
Yeah, that was definitely before my time.
Yeah. Well,
you should have seen Roxy's face.
It used to be Ma Bell.
Yes.
And they broke it up into several regional Bell.
Mm-hmm. I remember well.
because I was in school at the time, and the business people were all talking about how that was such a horrible thing. It could never be allowed to happen again. And that was the day after that decision was rendered, and they broke up the bill, that the move got started to create this corporate environment where corporations were now imbued with all these rights and privileges.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, I'll take that. I don't have a. It is above my pay grade to say, oh well, exactly. I know when this occurred, because I kind of have from the readings that I've done, a lot of it is cyclical. I mean, if you remember the days of the robber barons, I mean, I don't know that J.P. Morgan or these other guys were any less or more benevolent than the guys today. I mean, I kind of see some similarities. In fact, if I look at the economy of 29 and I look at the economy of 2000, what year are we in? 2014. If I look at the disparity that we have today, if I look at all these different issues, I see so many darn similarities that I fear that irrespective of what you say, I know that as far as when the baby bells broke up, the corporations were like, we can't let this happen again. But I think that's the same way they felt in 1929. And let me bring John into this discussion if we can get both on. Yeah, John, come on in.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about the case and how the case is actually, in my opinion, is more of a political case, because Hobby Lobby was actually supplying their employees with Plan B and Ella, both of the drugs. Now, they didn't supply IUDs in their health care plan. And so, I mean, I think that's a very important point to make because, before this was going on, they never did this. And Louise Slaughter made a good point also on Chris Hayes' show that this was totally political. All these lawsuits that are being filed on behalf of the ACA, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't have sincere religious beliefs, but I mean, this is incredibly political. What's going on?
I want to interrupt you a second there because I'm going to disagree with you in one point. I don't think I don't think it's sincere. How can it be sincere when people within that company structure, actually owned stocks in corporations that were already providing these devices? Think about that.
Yeah, no, I see your point. I'm just that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I mean, they didn't carry the IUDs. They have religious beliefs, but it's mostly political. And so, I mean, I guess you're reinforcing the point that I'm saying. It is mostly political.
Right.
And so, this is, and if you look at the court, this court is just so unbelievable. There was also a guy, and they were on Chris Hayes' show, and he was talking about, how they're shutting off a lot of the people's water in Detroit.
In Detroit, it's a shame.
Skyrocketing water bills. And so he was talking about, how this is similar to the shutdown of government, or, the fact that they don't raise the minimum wage, or, I mean, the Hobby Lobby decision. These are all very similar. This is all, something that is pushed by what you call the Powell Doctrine, and you talked about this on your show.
Absolutely.
It started in the 70s by the ex-Supreme Court judge. And
Lewis Powell. Oh, yes.
Right, Lewis Powell. And this is a movement that is, trying to make every aspect of America more corporate and more to try to tone down the middle class and tone down the working class and have the 1% and get their advantages. And so that's what's going on. I mean, this is completely political.
But you know what? First, I'm going to say two things here. There are two things. Did you want to say something?
Okay. If it's so political, and which I agree. Like, I can see, this is a political move for corporations like Hobby Lobby. However, what message are you trying to say? Because as much first of all, John, what do you mean by supplying birth? Like, Hobby Lobby was physically giving women Plan B and
No, they were paying for this as part of their health plan.
Which
Hobby
I think
Lobby had a health plan before the ACA came into effect, and they were giving. When I say giving, they offered as part of their health plan both Plan B and Ella. They didn't cover IUDs, and so they were sincere in that aspect of it. But they saw the opportunity to make a political statement and to push the law and to see how far this extreme right-wing court would go, and they won. They won their case, and it's unbelievable.
But we also have to think of, like, the flip side. Like, okay, this is a very political move, yes, but what's going to happen to the politics where, I'm sorry, teen pregnancy is at an all-time high? So what's going to happen when, teens are growing up and they're being, I think now more than ever, you have sexual education classes, as young as middle school, maybe even younger, which needs to happen. It shouldn't, but it needs to happen. So what's going to happen when teachers are trying to teach their, kids, hey, listen, if you do it, protect yourself, birth control, condoms, whatever is out there. But some of the kids, unfortunately are not being able to get in colleges, don't go to college, start working for corporations like Hobby Lobby. So what's going to happen if they're thinking in their mind, okay, this is so easy for me to get, but oh wait, on my health plan, if they're going to pay for me to go get my teeth cleaned, they can't pay for me to protect myself. And then, so what's going to happen when that 18-year-old girl gets pregnant and can't come to work?
When Terry started the talk, and you can come in here anytime, Terry, and he spoke about the Talibanization of America. That's a striking statement, but it's a real statement. You made an educated statement. And that's dangerous when you talk about the Talibanization of a culture. What I mean by that is people are not looking at what would be the results of bad policy. You've just mentioned what the results of bad policy would be. More teen pregnancies, more diseases, more of all these things. So we have these closed-minded folks trying to change the social nature of the country. But at the same time that they're trying to change the social nature of the country, they're not talking about wanting to invest in having underprivileged kids have other things to do that will prevent them from doing these things.
Exactly, like these political moves, like, okay, yeah, it might be a political move to see how far they can push this, this court, but at the same time, like, you have to think about the people, like I was talking about with you, Egberto, right. Like, you have to think about the people who are doing all the work for you, the moms who had a kid at 15 years old and is trying her hardest not to, have her kid. So yeah, I'm going to try and get my girl on birth control. I know she's, doing whatever she's doing. I just want her to be safe, but she can't pay for it because it's expensive. Like, it's
Roxy, what's going to happen is the same. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
What's going to happen is the same thing that is happening right now. The far-right coalition will stick their head in the sand and pretend the problem doesn't exist. Now, I'm going to make an even broader statement, Berto, and
Terry.
It's not just the Talibanization of America. The far-right coalition harkens a return to the Dark Ages. And you see it in the refutation of science. You see it in the dumbing down of education. You see it in the attacks on structure of education. You see it in the methodologies that they employ for suppression, repression, of voters, suppression of women. I mean, it's about their little club and their little clique, and they don't give a damn about the rest of the world. And as far as they're concerned, what they'd really like, to be honest with you, if you sit in any of these 1% meetings and some of these luncheons, like I've had the misfortune of being in, you listen to these people, what they'd really like is a state like Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. Well,
where the people who have the money have the power and make all the rules, and all the women are subjugated and are second-class citizens, and only the rich get sent to Europe and get sent to America for a world-class education, and the rest are illiterate, ignorant, and poor.
You hit it on the money. I got to give a quick station break, folks. This is KPFT FM, Houston 90.1, Galveston 89.5, Huntsville 89.7, Goodrich, Livingston 90.3. Do remember that the telephone number is 713-526-5738, 713-526-KPFT, and I am with Ann. Come on in, Ann.
Hi. I find your conversation is really interesting, and I think it's important that we stay very clear about what the agenda of the entity like Hobby Lobby is. It's not about a religious agenda, as the guy before me said. It's about trying to disassemble the ACA.
Right.
And I mean, I think if we forget that and start talking about the implications of a Talibanization of the country or something, we're falling into their ploy of making this about religion or something. It's not about religion. They're trying to make as much money as they can, and they do it by, in part, making sure that health care system that already was in place stays, and we don't get a single-payer health.
You know, and first of all, look, two things can be occurring at the same time. And, even before President Obama's campaign was on providing universal health care, the Talibanization that Terry is talking about was in vogue. So, I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. But I
think it's just a ploy. I think it's the right wing appropriating a religious idea for their ends of making money.
There's no doubt.
They can rein in a whole group of people who are not particularly sophisticated in their thinking by making it about God and country.
If you remember when the moral majority, are you old enough to remember the moral majority?
Absolutely.
Okay. Remember the moral majority. That was a union that was made. That was a union put together. The moral majority, the upper class Republicans, and I don't want to say the moderates because that sect wasn't all that moderate, but those folks got together in a coalition to beat up on everybody else. And it was put together by design. So I agree with you 100%. But again, two things can be happening.
I think that there was a component of that did precede this, like the Powell memo idea. And
did you hear my Powell memo show at all? I think
they appropriated it,
Right. About 6 weeks ago, I actually did a show specifically on the Powell memo and showed how that was the new beginning. And notice I said the new beginning because we have to remember the robber baron days, J.P. Morgan, all these other guys. But, I mean, when I spoke about the Powell memo, that was like, let's rebuild. And the thing about it is they rebuilt and liberals did not.
Well, and they're very good at it. I mean, they have a way of crafting the language so that it's a little sneaky. I mean,
you're sure right about that.
They've done it very well, and that's the part that's so frightening about it is that they, I mean, I hadn't heard of the Powell memo till like last year or something.
Oh, really?
It's been around since the 70s.
Wow, yeah. It's actually he wrote that just before he got onto the Supreme Court.
When was that?
Back in, I want to say the early 70s, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I thought of, 72, 3, something. But, I agree with you about I mean, I think that a big part of the agenda was to undo what Roosevelt had done.
Right.
To curb the robber barons, which caused
the New Deal. It was the attempt to dismantle the New Deal, which actually worked. And, to this day, to this day, when I hear economists like Laffer talk about how the New Deal didn't really work, when today, and folks should read the New York Times today, Paul Krugman article on supply side economics and why it is that the cranks, and I don't remember the cranks and some other word he used, why is it that we're still attempting to follow these policies. It is simply and entirely crazy. Well, look, we have about 3 more minutes that I can be talking here. So why don't you give me a quick last word, Ann, and then I'm going to jump to Terry and John to close us out.
Just a good conversation. Thanks.
Thank you very much for being with us. And that was prompt. You're not like my 2 other talkers here. Okay, Terry, come on in, my friend. Give me a closer.
Yeah, I'll be equally brief. Just make sure that we keep following these decisions that are coming down from the Supreme Court.
Excellent. Thank you, buddy. But, you were quicker than I needed you to be, but that's all right. John, come on in.
Yeah, I just want to speak about what the next options are, and I think Roxy made a good point to put it on the human level to see all the women that are going to be affected by this, and also you were talking about that earlier, also Egberto,
right?
About how it really is specifically against women, and that is absolutely awful. One point I'd like to make also is that people have been talking about this before. It doesn't really say, there were I think four things that the Green family was opposed to, and I think it was Judge Ginsburg who asked him in oral arguments. He says, "What about the other 20 or so devices? Would you be opposed to those 2?" And they said, yeah, possibly. So that's probably the next thing, because you still have people like Santorum who are against, all forms
of birth control
or
contraception.
Birth control. And so, there's still this radical fringe that believes that, and it is hard to believe. It's unbelievable. And so that's probably they set themselves up for this Pandora's box, and people are just going to come back and say, well, how much more radical can you get? Is this more radical? And the only thing against that was Alito was saying in his decision, he said, well, we're not going to have this extend to like blood transfusions or vaccines. This is only about, these women's birth control. Well, so in other words, one religion is better than another,
right.
is closer to his religious beliefs, and so he'll recognize that.
You know what?
But,
I'm on a tight close right now, John, but you're absolutely right. I don't see that, just like how Citizens United led forward to McCutcheon, this case will lead forward to other cases that will further restrict women's rights. So women listening here, I'm going to tell you guys something. Pay attention, because you are currently being used by the pawns, by that Supreme Court, 5 men taking over control of yourself. This is Egberto Willies, Politics Done Right. Please visit my website, egbertowillies.com. And with that, thank you very much for giving me this time. Thank you very much for listening. And we are out.
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.
Jumpstart your weekend and get your groove on at Discovery Green during the Thursday concert series presented by UHD. Enjoy free concerts showcasing dynamic entertainers from Texas and the Gulf Coast. The series finale for the Spring 2014 Discovery Green Thursday concert series is on Thursday and features Houston's own Archie Bell, Mr. Tighten Up himself, joined by Barbara Lynn from Beaumont, Texas. Archie hit the #1 spot on the charts in 1968 while teaching the world to tighten up, and Barbara stormed the charts in 1962 with her signature hit, You'll Lose a Good Thing. Attention St. Arnold fans, this concert features recycling of empty 6, 12, 24-pack carriers for St. Arnold. Bring your empty carriers to the park and double your reward points from St. Arnold Brewing Company. Concerts begin at 6:30. Most street parking is free starting at 6 p.m. For more details on the Discovery Green Thursday Concert Series, visit discoverygreen.com. This is KPFT Houston,